Welcome back, everybody, to 31 1980s horror movies for Halloween, where I'm counting down my favorite horror movies from the 1980s. At number 5, we have a true gem of the 80s, and seriously, this is a true underrated gem of the 1980s, and it still does not have a proper Blu-ray release here in the United States, and that is wrong, because this movie is great. And that movie is The Hitcher.
You got the knife. You'll stick me with it before I can do anything.
That's right. So what have you got to lose? Stop me.
I have been a fan of The Hitcher ever since I saw it way back when I was in middle school, and I've always been mad that there's not a proper Blu-ray release, because out of all the horror movies that deserve a good quality Blu-ray release, it's The Hitcher. It's another one of those movies that has a simple premise, but it's executed perfectly. We have this young man named Jim Halsey, played by C. Thomas Howell, taking a car across country, delivering this car across country, and he's on this long stretch of road. He eventually ends up picking up this hitchhiker, who we later find out is named John Ryder, played by Rutger Hauer. I love this man. May he rest in peace.
You gonna tell me where you're going?
Yeah, sure.
What are you looking at me like that for?
As they're driving together, John Ryder reveals that the last person he picked up, he killed him, and he's going to do the same to Jim.
Because I cut off his legs and his arms
And his head. And I'm gonna do the same to you.
But Jim wants to live and finds a way to get this guy out of his car. And then the Hitcher makes it his mission to not kill Jim Halsey, but make his life a living hell. Now, I have always said that, for me, the two scariest villains in horror are Candyman and John Ryder. They're very different from each other, okay? Candyman is a supernatural being. John Ryder is some guy on this long stretch of road that goes around killing people. But they both do things the same way. They do something to their victims that I think is scarier than Freddy Krueger, Michael Myers, or Jason Voorhees. Focusing on John Ryder, this is a guy that when he finds the right person, he doesn't want to kill them. He wants to turn the whole world against them, making their lives a living hell, until eventually that person wants to die.
Why are you doing this to me?
You're a smart kid. I'll figure it out.
I hear people talk about psychological torture in horror movies, and for me, what John Ryder puts Jim Halsey through is the best psychological torture I've seen in any movie. And it's this relationship that forms between Jim Halsey and John Ryder that makes this movie work. You have this kid who just has this guy who is after him, and he doesn't know why. He doesn't know why any of this shit is happening to him. All he knows is that he has to deal with it. He has to figure out how he can get out of this situation. And you have John Ryder playing all these mind games with Jim, committing all these murders, and making it look like Jim is the one committing these murders, turning all these people against him. He eventually meets this girl named Nash, played by Jennifer Jason Leigh, who joins him on this quest and believes that he is innocent. But Jim is the target of John Ryder, and it's a great dynamic. It's him versus the Hitcher.
Why didn't he kill us?
Let's go.
John Ryder is one of the greatest horror movie villains. I have him in my top 5 favorite horror movie villains. I put him above the big 3. And the reason for that is, in order to talk about that, let me talk about this. You have the Joker from The Dark Knight. Now, everybody loves the character of the Joker because they say he's an agent of chaos. He doesn't really have a plan. But for me, John Ryder is even more of an agent of chaos. You have this feeling that he's constantly going around this long stretch of road killing people, and he doesn't really have a plan. He just decides how to do things, because when he decides to go after Jim, you can tell he just decides it on a whim. When he's first thrown out of Jim's car, there's that moment when he stands up and he has that look in his eye, and you know, oh yeah, he's gonna fuck this guy up.
Boom! That guy will kill you! That guy, get him out of your car! Pull over!
And for me, that makes him even more of an agent of chaos, because he's literally just doing things on a whim. He could decide to turn the world against you, or he could decide to kill you. It doesn't matter to him. Even his own life doesn't really matter to him, because he does mention to Jim, hey, can you stop me?
What do you want?
I want you to stop me.
And I do have to talk about a spoiler here, so that's a spoiler alert, spoiler alert. Please stop this video now, go watch The Hitcher. It's a great fucking movie. There's a scene where John Ryder has the character Nash tied up between 2 trucks. She has her arms tied to one truck and her legs tied to another truck, and he's getting ready to pull her apart. It's one of the greatest off-screen kills in horror. Because, you know, you have some great on-screen kills, but this is one of the best off-screen kills. Because there's this moment with Jim and John in the truck, and John Ryder gives Jim a gun and says, hey, can you stop me from doing this? And Jim knows that even if I do shoot you, there's no way I can stop you from doing this. And it's such a suspenseful moment. And then John Ryder lets that truck roll. And what adds an extra element to this scene is there are cops all around these 2 trucks. So now at this point they know Jim is innocent, but they can't do anything because, again, he's got his foot on the brake of this truck, and if he lets his foot off the brake of that truck, it's going to roll forward and kill Nash. So you have all these cops here, and they can't do anything about it. And then you think about Nash's point of view. She's tied between these 2 trucks, seeing all these people around her that can't help her.
Now you get in there, and you see what you can do.
And then the truck eventually rolls, and we don't see what happens to Nash, but we don't need to see what happens to Nash, because it's a truck. You know what a truck can do to a human body. I mean, anytime, whatever the situation is, if it's truck versus a person, truck's always gonna win. Except for in Duel. That's the one case where it's the other way around. The Hitcher is one of the most underrated horror movies of the 1980s. It's one of the most underrated horror movies ever, and it has earned cult classic status, but it deserves an even wider fan base. It has a big fan base. I mean, I'm a part of that fan base, definitely, but it deserves a much bigger fan base. The Hitcher is one of the greatest road horror movies ever made. I don't think you can find any horror movie based on, like, people going down a road better than The Hitcher. The Hitcher may not be your typical Halloween season horror movie, but it is so worth a watch. It's suspenseful, it has a great protagonist, it has a great villain. The relationship between the protagonist and the villain is so intriguing and fascinating. I cannot recommend The Hitcher enough. Just when you're done with this video, go out and watch it. It's just a great movie.